Todd.
Well, I'm glad I got you today because there is, wow, so much going on, man. Zelensky is saying, nope, not going to do it, not going to make peace. Venezuela's percolating. Let's start there. What do you want to say about Venezuela? I have that article ready if you want me to bring that up.
Yeah, pop that up because it's really great. I think for all our viewers, it's great, clarity on why Venezuela. So, this is from a guy named Hugo Carvajal Barrios, who was a high-ranking member of both the Hugo Chavez and Maduro regimes. He was military intelligence. He's in prison right now. When Maduro took over, he had to flee because he was at odds with Maduro. So his choice was get killed by Maduro or flee to the U.S. and plead guilty to the narco terrorism rap that they had out on him, which he chose. So he voluntarily admitted his crimes. He's been sitting in prison, since 18. So he's been in there a while. And just very quickly to highlight, I'll just read his paragraph. I publicly broke with Maduro in 2017 and fled my country, knowing that I faced criminal charges. Knowing the risks, I acted with the strongest conviction to dismantle Maduro's criminal regime and bring freedom to my country. Today, I see a need to address the American people about the reality of what the Venezuela regime truly is and why President Trump's policies are not only correct, but absolutely necessary to the United States national security. And the article, I recommend it to everyone, but I'll just touch on a couple of the highlights. First, the narco terrorism. And, he talks about in the narco terrorism, the plan was suggested by the Cuban regime in the mid 2000s and has been successfully executed with the help of the FARC, ELN, Cuban operatives, and Hezbollah. And, if I had sat for a couple months and tried to come up with no one's thought of this group of terrorists as being a serious threat to America, I probably wouldn't have come up with that. I might have because I have knowledge of the FARC and ELN, but just him putting those together, it makes total sense. All four of them have huge, long records. Many of us have conducted ops, against the FARC and ELN. ELN is the Ejército Liberación Nacional. They're in they're the guerrilla army in the north of Colombia, up against the Venezuela border. They've been at odds with Venezuela cartels, but they've also worked with them smuggling drugs. So this group has money. They've decades of history together, institutional history, and that includes Hezbollah. And so bringing them all together and then having a country where it's a safe haven, they can fly into calm air and coordinate, gives you a little bit of an idea of how serious that is. And then he just points out Tren de Agua, which remember Argua, I should say, to pronounce it properly. Remember, that was the focus of Homeland Defense and Homan in the early days of trying to find these illegal immigrants. And again, same thing. I like what he says, his final paragraph. When Biden and Harris' open border policy became widely known, they seized the opportunity to send operatives into the United States. They now have obedient armed personnel on American soil. To finance their ops, they were explicitly instructed to continue extorting, killing, and kidnapping. So, that one, very serious. They're inside the country, these gang members, the Tren de Agua, there's a real network behind them, and it's again a network with over $1 trillion in cash, and that's as much of a threat as anything. Finally, He just talks about Smartmatic, and again, I recommend to everyone to read this. Smartmatic was born, he says, as an electoral tool of the Venezuelan regime, but soon derived into a tool to help keep the regime stay in power forever. I know this because I placed the head of IT of the National Electoral College in his position. People of the United States make no mistake about the threat posed by allowing a narco-terrorist organization to roam freely in the Caribbean and throughout Latin America, doing everything possible to harm the American people, to finance anti-Americanism across the continent, and to facilitate the operation of other terrorist organizations and enemies in the United States. So, you
You know,
know,
we had Emerald Robinson on last week, and you can find, or our audience can find that on YouTube or our Rumble channel or on cdm.press. But she goes into the pushback from inside the U.S. government to actually look at this problem, you know, from the election standpoint, and it was really just the person. People talk about you can't make a difference. Well, just a handful of individuals literally saved the country by pointing this stuff out. You know, Patrick Byrne and Bernstein and others. So you know, it's you can find that interview, but the story is really amazing. So I'm glad you wanted to highlight this.
yeah, and Todd, I think to your point last week, this, Pete Hegseth needs to come out. He needs to do a press conference. I'm not, criticizing him, but it's you've got to clarify the purpose, and
Mm-hmm.
we're going to see the long-term implications of that in a moment. Looking at Ukraine as a time machine for what happens when you do not explain and persuade your people that the purpose of your combat operations makes sense. And again, that's not just the people, that's your soldiers, your
Yes.
military who's fighting it. They have to know the logic of why it makes sense to fight.
And
That's
there's
the
an
only
info
way to.
war against them right now. I mean,
Great
trying to
point.
stop them from following orders.
Great point. And we're
Yeah.
going to talk about that too, how despicable that is. But that's, we need to hear that. That's fascinating stuff. You and I were skeptical. It shouldn't take ex-military guys to have to dig into their contact network to find out what's really going on. you
Mm-hmm.
know, at this point, all of that, especially that letter, they could just put that letter out and read it
Yeah.
because it states it so eloquently. And I think everyone would say, of course, there's an entire rogue nation down there, and it's not just like Somalia. This is a nation with trillions of dollars of cash from both oil and drugs, and a hatred and a passion to, conduct anti-Western actions and operations. So serious, serious threat down there.
Yes, definitely. And we're going to stay on that. I'll be in the Pentagon again next week on the 15th and meeting with a lot of people, but that's a story we're going to try to get answers to. I don't know when they're going to have their next official briefing, but we will be there. Well, I got more, Pete, whenever you're ready.
Yeah, let's let's go to the ground. Start with the reality of the situation on the ground in Ukraine, and maybe start with those with the Putin. Let's
Okay.
yeah, before we go to Julia, because that's so good. But I just want to give a couple for Putin gave that summary of the meeting, and it struck me that that's another thing we never see in the U.S. We never
You mean
hear him.
the one, I'm sorry, you mean the one about the
It was like the last one I sent you, one of the last
yeah,
ones.
that was just a couple blurbs. Let me just read those. Many American companies want to return to Russia. Many American companies, want access to what we're doing, and Russia wants to end the war that the West started using Ukraine's hands. And it goes in through. Actually, I do have one from Putin. Hold on.
Yeah,
Sorry, man. I'm just trying to keep
that's
it. I
okay.
think this is it. Yeah, this is it. That's the bullet points that he went through.
Yeah, yeah. So he just, he very positive comments about the Wickoff Kushner meeting. Lasted
Mhm.
a long time. Russia will free Donbass and Nova Russia, which is new Russia anyway, either through military means or another way. He talks about the proposals the American brought are an extension of what they talked about in Alaska. So again, people are, the propaganda, the negative propaganda has made it seem like that was a waste of time, and no one what was said there doesn't matter. But they're building and I'll get to that in a second, you can tell they're building on a foundation on common ground right now. And then he just reiterates some of the points that I've been pounding and everyone should talk about as we continue to listen to this propaganda. For 8 years, Russia had been trying to establish relations between the DPR, the Donetsk People's Republic, and the Luhansk People's Republic and Ukraine. But Kyiv did not recognize them, and the republics did not want to remain part of it and expressed this in a referendum. That is the point of everything, that these oblasts have already voted for independence, first autonomy, then independence, then alignment, national alignment with Russia. And why did they do that? Because they were being systematically eliminated. They were the victims of a deliberate genocidal war against them that went on for 8 years, as Putin states. And just to put, exclamation point on it, Ukraine, the Rada just passed into law the outlawing of the Russian language in Ukraine. So again, just by the UN's Human Rights Charter rules, when you deny people their ability, their language, their history, their religion, you have violated the UN human rights, the foundational human rights, which means you can no longer govern those people. So it's incredibly ironic that we're still talking, and Zelensky is dragging his feet along with the Europeans about Donbass, and none of them continue to talk about the people who will not go back to Ukraine. They wouldn't even go back kicking and screaming. So
it's even worse than that.
option.
It's even worse than that, Pete, because the institutions that we set up, as you said, the UN, are the ones enforcing this tyranny and pushing it. So, I mean, they've completely lost any legitimate, any legitimacy in the eyes of the people, especially there.
Well said, Todd. And in my original article, folks, which is on my Substack.com, the chronology history of Ukraine Russia war, in that I note exactly that moment when that happened. I reference it, and you can see, you can go in and look at reports as they happen. So everything about this is still available. It's not hidden. It's factual, but it's being covered up because it happened from 14 to 22, and we're in 25. So anyway, just wanted to show very reasonable replies. He's not spitting fire. He's not threatening. He's not calling names. He's just stating the facts, which he's been doing the whole time. And there's an old saying: never bypass the ability to take the high ground with civility. Because that's always the best road to where you want to go. And you're seeing, never have you seen a more stark contrast. The Europeans, who are as uncivil as you can get, as warmongering, and you have Putin, just talking facts. So, all right, we can go to that Mandel
all right, let me get rid of this
statement now too, which is really powerful. So, again, we want to go onto the ground. We want to talk what's, the reality. And before I read this, I just want to, state a couple facts. As of January 25, the population of Russia was estimated to be 146 million people. Ukraine, including Donbass and Crimea, which there's no people in Donbass right now anyway, they fled, is 37 million. So almost exactly a 4-to-1 ratio.
Well, that was before the war, I think.
Well, no, this is 2025.
Okay.
So before the war, it was higher. This number, the 37 million, though, you're correct. People believe, because the amount of people who left Ukraine, the intelligentsia, the young people, believe this number is down around 30 million, which would make it more like a 1 to 5. But it's important. I just wanted to point out that manpower ratio. So the situation on the front, as always, continues to get worse for Ukraine. And there's been a series. Now we're seeing the cracks, the fissures in this closed society that Zelensky has created in Ukraine. and in no way more impactful than Zelensky's old press secretary. Her name's Julia Mendel. She was well respected. She quit a while back, but what she wrote is, I don't think there's a more succinct description of reality of this war right now than this. And I'm going to read it just because we have some viewers who only listen to our podcast. So this is Julia Mendel, ex-Zelensky press secretary, Ukrainian. Every subsequent deal for Ukraine will only be worse because we are losing. We are losing people, territory, and the economy. The EU, which, by the way, has paid Russia more than 311 billion euros for energy and goods since February 22, has no real strategy, no way to stop fueling Russian budget or support Ukraine enough to win. They also have no direct dialogue with Moscow and no meaningful leverage over either the Kremlin or Washington. Arguments that Russia has gained so little land sound almost childish when you consider the human cost. We have lost more people in 3 years than some European nations have as the whole population. My country is bleeding out. Many who reflexively oppose every peace proposal believe they are defending Ukraine. With all respect, that is the clearest proof they have no idea what is actually happening on the front lines and inside the country right now. War is not a Hollywood movie. I will never abandon the values that God and democracy both place at the very foundation of human existence. Human life is the highest good, and people, living, breathing people, are the ones who must be saved. I mean, you can't say it any better than that. And you know, it's for the influencers and the globalists who continue to try to sabotage the peace plan. They need to read this, and all of us need to read it, because to me it reinforces that these globalists who are doubling down, including these Euro leaders, specifically Mars, Starmer, and Macron, they need to be held accountable when this is all over, and it's going to be over soon. They need to be held accountable
Yes.
for their words and their actions, because this blood is on their hands. And for our American influencers, many of whom we've named before, and you can see the tired talking point of, which I just heard again from one of our favorite ex-generals the other day, about Russia's barely taken any ground in the last year. They've been fighting against Pakros for 2.5 years, and they're only now finally taking it. Again, it's childish, because in the state, while you're saying that, you understand, of course, they're not taking terrain, because that's not their goal. That's not their strategy. They are wholesale destroying the Ukrainian army. And what you see, the terrain, like right now, 4 big cities are falling. Pakros just fell. Seversk is falling. Uye is falling. And one other one, Dnipro, is also falling. So, but there, it's not that Russia suddenly said, take the towns. It's that when you attrit forces, it's like an onion. You're each layer you're eliminating until you get to the middle of it, or there's nothing left to uncover anymore. And that's what's happened. The defenses, they've just methodically erased those defenses until there's nothing left except guys who have been abandoned, like we're looking at in Myrnograd right now. So
Let
there's
me ask
also,
you, Pete, what happens? We're at the point where, Russia's going to keep, grinding forward. I think Trump's probably going to back out of this in some manner. What that'll look like, I don't know. But what is going to be the EU reaction? That's what I'm worried about. I mean, they don't
yeah.
want. I mean, they've talked about selling treasury bonds or whatever, but I mean, they've got nuclear weapons. These people want a war. So what are they going to do? What do you think?
Yeah, I think, and it's, part of what I'll conclude with at the end. I
Okay.
think it's an incredibly perilous time.
Mhm.
We've said it before, desperate men make desperate moves. That's human nature. That's not
Mhm.
some, nifty new ism. It's
Mhm.
ancient wisdom, and they are desperate. And I don't think there's ever been three European leaders with lower approval ratings than those three, and so power is not just slipping through their fingers. It's pouring. It's a tidal wave going out the
Mhm.
door, and they're watching it. And so I agree with you. It's much more perilous than I ever thought it was right now. And again, that's why when I sum up, it'll be another recommendation to President Trump on what he needs to do to uh, have more impact than just stopping the war. We're not just talking the Ukraine war; we're talking a nuclear war in Europe, and and I would just point out that when you have three individuals like Macron, Starmer, and Mers,
Mhm.
who know nothing about either international relations, warfare, and obviously don't care about what their people think, you are in real danger of a accidental or a stumbling into kinetic exchange. It could be just long range missiles. It doesn't have to go right to nuclear, but it could be just an exchange. And
Yeah.
remember, those three boutique armies are hollowed out.
Yeah.
They've had to suck up the wokeism, DEI crap way longer. The U.S. had 4 intense years of it, which we've gone a long way already of eradicating. They are into their 15th to 20th year, and so their militaries are hollowed out, and they don't have options. They have one option that gives them parity with Russia, and that's the nuclear option. And so it's incredibly dangerous, and it bears attention by President Trump for sure.
Well, I think this is no doubt a spiritual conflict, and that's what we're dealing with. And I would like to see the EU taken apart. It's no longer what it was designed to do. I think Trump should use this opportunity to do just that, and bring back sovereign nations. That's what we're going to push for here. I don't want to be ally. I'm upset we have American troops over there right now because they were trying to hurt us. So why are
Yeah,
we supporting them?
yeah.
I think that has to get out there. All right,
Well,
I've
you're
got a lot.
seeing Congress came out yesterday, said they're going to try to block it, try to
Yeah,
block the troop reductions. And now, Todd, we go back and we realize why Mattis was obviously a globalist. That's why
hmm,
he resigned. They remember his big thing with
yeah,
Trump was Trump wants to reduce forces in Europe.
yeah,
And to our viewers, any military guy who's been to Europe, been to what we have in Europe, and has been there since the 80s, realizes that what we have now is farcical.
yeah. It is.
It's not. There's no good training over there. There's very little, but it's pales in comparison to anything in CONUS. We're not. Just think of, why are we over there? Why do we
Exactly.
have soldiers? They're not going to all go be the tip of the spear. If these countries get attacked, they have to defend themselves. So it doesn't
Well,
make
they're trying
sense
to pull us
anymore.
into a war. That's what bothers me. You
Yeah.
know,
Yep.
that's what they're there for, and they don't want us to leave. Don Bacon is a traitor, in my opinion. The congressman
Mm.
from Nebraska, who's outed himself many times to be on the wrong team, and he's one of the ones leading this charge in Congress to stop us pulling out troops out of Europe because they want us there to get us into a war. That's the whole
Yeah.
plan. It's been the plan. Get us into World War III, depopulate, take the land, take the resources. That's what they want.
And the final thing I'll say about that is, this is what Europe is eating the cake that they fake baked over the last 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
They were like the burglar sneaking out through the front room with all of the goods. It's so
Mm-hmm.
easy. No one ever woke up, no alarm. He's smiling, but he can't believe his luck. That's the way they were from the 90s all the way through the 2000s. They
Yeah.
were like, hey,
We
America's
can
got
take it.
this. We can
Yeah.
save on defense, use this money for social programs and uh, bureaucratic uselessness,
to build
but
an administrative state that was terrorizing Europe.
and right, and this not accidental. They did it deliberately. They neglected their defense. They neglected their soldiers, so they could save money on these ideological things that they thought important. Now they've been caught with, like the thief who he's almost out, but he trips and falls down and makes noise, and the alarm goes off.
He's like
That's
the
what just
Grinch.
happened to them. Yes, exactly. That's what just happened to them, and they can't believe it. But they're stuck with these boutique armies. They're powerless. They've destroyed their own economies. They'll be writing books about what Germany did to its manufacturing
Yes.
over the last 10 years for many years to come. Just economic carry, and now this is what they have. This is what they end up with. So
And Trump
it's
calls him
not
impotent.
accidental.
Yeah, Trump called him impotent, or the New York Post did, and Trump reposted it, which is
Yeah,
essentially what's happening.
yeah,
So I've got a lot of it. Let me just bring some of these up. You could talk about it. This is
yeah. So this one's good too. It's from a Ukrainian platoon commander, and I won't. There, he goes into talking, but I just highlighted the top part here. He marveled at Russian resources, including night vision. He, in the interview, it wasn't just that they have night vision. He said almost all of them have night vision, and we have like one per platoon. So right there you're seeing, and again, our influencers, the ex-generals, were in unison in 2022 saying this will be over in a year. Russia is got the worst equipment. They don't know how to use their equipment, and their army is, a paper tiger. And so
yeah.
you're seeing the reality coming from soldiers. And then he says, if we have 3 people, they have 30. How much manpower they have is just unreal. So remember what I opened with, the 4-to-1. It's not 30-to-1, it's 4-to-1. However, if you take out 1,000,005 casualties, remember about 5 episodes ago, I talked about there's 7 million Ukrainian men between the ages of 19 and 60. So that's your population. But if you take 1.5 out dead, and then you take 5 to 750 deserters, so now you're at 2 to 2.5, 2.2 and a quarter. And then you add in those young men who just fled when Zelensky mistakenly took off the no travel ban. They're down to only a couple million, and that 4-to-1 that now gets translated into what these guys are seeing on. They have 30-to-1. Is he's being hyperbolic, but he's not. He's just saying what he sees on the battlefield, which over time not only has a physical effect, has a psychological effect on your soldiers, and obviously that's what's happening on the ground to Ukraine right now.
Right. So here's
So
recent
this is
Pokrovsk.
Myrnograd. Yep,
Okay.
Pokrovsk is over here completely. It's 100% controlled by Russia right now. These are what's believed to be between 1,500 and 2,000 Ukrainians who were abandoned. Initially, they were simply being resupplied by drones. That has fallen apart. These guys are close to starving. The prisoners, I just saw a prisoner interrogation from 2 days ago. They're just wandering through houses, finding old canned goods, anything they can to eat. Some of them still don't know they're surrounded, though most know they're abandoned because there's no radio contact with their chain of command.
I think
So
I have a
again,
video of them trying to resupply, right? Do you want to
yeah, you do,
play
and it's
that?
pretty cool.
Yeah.
And again, just so
Sorry.
no, it's okay. This is good. That's anti-drone warfare. They're taking out Ukrainian drones, the Baba Yaba drones. So
So those were trying
that
to resupply the troops with food, and they're
right.
shooting them down. Yeah.
Yep, taking them out. So you've got this air war between drones going on, but serious situation. Syrskyi, the commanding general of Ukraine, 2 days ago did a massive press conference. He looked horrible, like you would imagine a guy whose army is about to be overrun. And again, bizarre obstinance said, we control the northern half of Pakros. They control the southern, but we're not worried about it. They've been trying to take Pakros for 2.5 years. It's obvious they can't do it. We're not worried about it. And you see the
Well,
physical reality.
it's very reminiscent of Baghdad Bob back during my time. There are no American troops approaching Baghdad. you know.
Well, what it's also a mirror image of, Todd, is the Eastern Front,
Yeah.
and all the mistakes. If you read about the Eastern Front, which was right here, actually fought outside Pakros,
Hmm.
Russia, USSR against Germany. When you look at the after action, why did Germany lose the most men they lost in the whole war, which is what happened from the Eastern Front? Number one, they underestimated Russia's military capability, grossly underestimated Russia's military capability. Number two, grossly underestimated Russia's military industrial complex capacity. And then number three, grossly underestimated Russia's strategic acumen. So those are the three lessons from the Eastern Front, and they're the exact three lessons of this Ukraine war. And the only difference is, instead of Nazi Germany, you have Nazi Ukraine,
Well,
which,
Pete, I would bet that those three lessons were also learned by Napoleon too. But
yeah, yep,
I'm not confident of that. But I think it's the same region, same thing. Same mistakes.
yeah.
History rhymes.
And they're not, Todd, and it's inexcusable for these ex-general officers because, and people can go look for it. I did an interview in 2022 before the war started, and someone said, well, what do you think's going to happen? And I said, I don't know. I just know principles, and one principle I know is never underestimate Russia. And,
Hmm.
you and I were brought up, Russia was the fake enemy we went up against as
Hmm.
lieutenants and captains in every scenario we trained on.
Yeah.
So we studied Russian, doctrine.
Oh
We
yeah.
studied Russian tactics. So we had every reason. But anyone who did that, anyone who came up, which is all these general officers, you also walked away with never ever underestimate Russia. They are a formidable force. Their soldiers are hard as woodpecker lips. They can unite like very few countries we know of around the world, and history matters. They've done it many times in the past, and they'll do it again. So,
Yeah. I
people
still
have
have.
known this.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was going to say I still have nightmares of aircraft ID. I can pick a MiG 21 out of out of any collage quickly. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's exactly the way we grew up. And I was on machine gun ranges
Hmm.
where all of the targets were BMPs,
Hmm.
BTRs.
Hmm.
So you know that's the way we grew up. And
Yeah.
this is not, you don't have to be a PhD military historian to know that lesson. It was known. It was known and ignored in the name of the emotional reptilian brain that obviously rides herd on globalists, leftists, and warmongers, because it's not logical, and they made again a cardinal error that all these generals and all of the Ukraine militaries had to suffer the repercussions from.
So let me run through these real quick.
Yeah,
This
let's
one
look at the.
um, uh, NATO exercising in Finland.
This is what I'm talking about. How dangerous this is. UK on the Russian border with the Finns.
Hmm.
Like, you think Russia? I mean, they're laughing at this.
Hmm.
We already showed that video of the Finns, trying to climb on the back of that pickup truck or whatever last episode. But this is the kind of thing they're doing, live fire exercises on the border.
Yeah.
So mistakes happen, and soldiers mistake things much easier than you think, because fear is riding herd, or right below the surface all the time. So this is a great example of how dangerous the game of the game that the EU is playing with Russia right now. I think you have a couple more, so you can just
Yeah,
go
let me
through
do
those.
this one is I'll let
Yeah,
you.
it's the same thing. This guy is the president of Finland, and we
Mhm.
Finns understand what you and the heroic people are going through. We will continue to support you for as long as it takes. Think of that in the context of what you read from Julia Mendel from
Mhm.
Ukraine. She's talking about guys like this.
Yeah.
Just horrific, but that's what we have, leading Europe right now.
This one is a
It's just a
Norwegian channel.
good,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a good article. Norway has been very much pro-Ukraine, anti-Russia, but this is what I meant by the cracks are starting to appear all through Europe. Some are just trying to, hey, I'm not going to be wrong on this one, and so some publications are coming out with reality now, trying to
Yeah.
backtrack. But others, you just can't hide it. And this guy goes in and talks about what I talked about. The Ukrainian army is being attrited, and I think his analogy was it's like in a flood. The ground can take the flood for the 3/4 of the flood. Then the clay underneath becomes saturated, and the whole ground is moved, destroyed, eroded.
Yeah.
Everything just flows downstream, and so that was his analogy for what's happening in Ukraine. I agree with it. They are attriting the Ukrainian frontline troops to such a level that there's just physically nothing, no front line anymore. It's gone, and pretty soon you're just going to have a complete breakdown of the military.
Yeah. Wow. So there's got a couple videos. This is I don't know if we need to play this. It's the audio of them telling them to shoot the Ukrainians retreating. Or do you
Yeah,
want to
you
play
can
that?
just show it. Just show it. No, because it's in Russian, in Ukrainian. Yes.
So tell us
So,
what that is. I
folks,
won't play the whole
yeah,
thing.
that's a Ukrainian commander in Mirnograd. So Mirnograd is 3/4 of the way surrounded. That's a Ukrainian commander telling his sub-unit commander to shoot any of the Ukrainians, his soldiers who take off, who try to desert. And it's not even deserting right now. It's common sense.
Yeah.
If I was there with my platoon, uh, I would want to live to fight another day instead of dying mindlessly
Yeah.
inside of a rubbled building that's about to get hit with a Fab 3000. I
Yeah.
would E&E right through Russian lines and take a long indirect route around, get back to my lines, get my people back, refit them, and get back in the fight. But
Yeah,
they're not
exactly.
allowed to move. They're not allowed to retreat, and that will be a war crime. I think it serves notice to the Ukrainians that not only do they know, but they're recording your tactical comms, and
Yeah.
there will be accountability after the war is over. Um,
So
but
here, the next video is we've talked a lot about the mobilization, where here is the people fighting back against the mobilization. So here you go.
yeah, I love this. This is down in Odessa. That's the recruiter's vehicle, the forced conscripts. And you see the men of
So
the
it looks like they
town.
broke the windows. I
Yep,
won't play all of that.
they
It
pulled
looks
the
like they
guy out.
pulled the guys out that were kidnapped. Yeah.
They did, and
So
then they pummeled the forced conscriptors. And folks, we show that again in it because it's such an indicator. And this is, our broader lesson to our viewers. Common
mhm.
sense is the most important asset you can have on the battlefield. You don't have to have trained for 20 years in military doctrine. You just need to stay anchored to your common sense. And when you see things like that makes sense of why Ukraine is losing. That makes sense of why their manpower is dissipating. They don't have the manpower to hold up against the Russian attrition. And it shows, the biggest thing it shows is that from the beginning, the logic of why Ukraine has claimed that this war makes sense has never held muster with the Ukrainian people. That's why they're 80% plus wanting peace and against Zelensky. But to see townspeople beating the crap out of forced conscriptors, saving the conscript, it's never happened in modern military history. We've never seen that. And yet, so it's, it's ignored by the mainstream media, but no one should ignore that. To our viewers,
Well,
share this
just
with
so
anyone.
our audience understands, it would be like an army recruiter forcibly taking kids out of the mall parking lot and the American citizens coming in and beating the crap out of him and letting the guys
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
That's essentially what's happening.
Yep.
So
It is.
there's one more. This is just the peace meeting.
Yeah, it's a good one and this is a good way to. I think you had a statement from President Trump. He just
Mhm.
made it 2 days ago. So, yeah, do you have
I
that?
don't have that
The
one.
Trump.
No,
It
sorry.
was the last thing I sent you. Okay, so
Oh,
Trump made a
okay.
statement yesterday. Said, "Hey, they should have taken the deal. When we offered it to them. Remember the mineral deal? This is the pre-meeting with mostly Democrats. Lindsey Graham is in there. There's a couple of Rhino Republic or
Well, yeah,
warmongering Republicans in there, but
Denang,
Chris Murphy,
Denang,
you see sitting up
Denang
there.
Dick. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
he's the guy who stood next to the. Just so everyone knows, accountability wise, he's the one who's with John McCain stood arm in arm with the neo-Nazi leader of the Svoboda Party during the Maidan protests. He was fully briefed that Maidan was fake protest run by USAID and George Soros NGO, which overthrew Viktor Yanukovych government. So that guy, Chris Murphy, who's one of the loudest voices criticizing terrain right now, had his fingers in the start of this war. He's responsible for egging on the neo Nazis and the Ukrainian politicians to go into this ridiculous concept that if we just eliminate all of the ethnic Russians from Eastern Ukraine, that'll cause Russians to overthrow Putin. And that's really why they overthrew Ukraine. They thought that by taking Ukraine, it would cause so much angst in Russia that Putin would be overthrown. So that guy and these guys are part of who need to be held accountable for keeping this war going.
And you got Denang Dick in there, Mr. Stolen
Yep,
Valor.
Blumenthal right
Yeah,
there.
yeah,
So really, again, accountability, I think, is everything, and they've got to be held accountable. So, and
yeah.
I just say the final thing, Todd, is here we are today, on the edge of potential peace, but
Mhm.
not because of these saboteurs.
Yeah.
And President Trump, my recommendation to him is, you know, people made fun of you for being a peacemonger, that it's all about the Nobel Peace Prize for stopping the war in Ukraine. Well, you can do something far bigger than stopping the war in Ukraine. You can potentially stop a nuclear war, and he can do it again instantly. Set up a meeting with Putin, come out hand in hand. We've agreed to normalize military, economic, and diplomatic relations between the United States and Russia. We already saw how many American companies have filed to do business again. The economy always knows ahead of time, follow the economic indicators. We need to normalize relations with Russia. That will instantly stop these psychotic EU leaders from tempting fate and desperate men make desperate moves, causing a nuclear catastrophe where when it's all over, everyone goes, how did we even let that happen?
Yeah.
How did we allow our world to be destroyed by a couple of fools when we all saw it happening? So again, President Trump, you have, I think, only they've given you only one option. They all came out. Well, intercepted phone calls were out this week between the European leaders
Yeah.
talking smack about Trump, talking smack about Kushner and Wickoff. Don't listen to these guys. We got to protect Putin. They're not, they're gone. They're not going to be convinced. They're not going to have a moment of clarity. We need to consider them gone, and we need to consider them extremely dangerous. And to President Trump, highly recommend normalization of relationship with Russia. If you're not already doing that, because I have a feeling in the background, the big anchor of these talks has been and still continues to be the economic potential and the potential to stop this insanity if we just integrate economically and diplomatically and take away this this insane, fixation with getting rid of Russia and Putin.
Well, as I've said many times, I think we're fighting, or which they want us to fight somebody's old war. I think this is much older and bigger than we realize, or than others realize. I think this is a globalist movement that wants to enslave the world, and that's what you can stop by ending this war. And with Venezuela, because you take out both of their playgrounds and a lot of their power, and then you can start cleaning out the U.S. government. So anyway, that's
well
my 2 cents. Pete, thank you, man. Really appreciate it. Great day.
Yep.
We'll have you back.
Take care, Todd.
All right, take care.